What's going on, guys? It's Talan Torriero from MTV's Laguna Beach. I am on the Hollywood Raw podcast. Tune in. I'm sharing all of my wild stories in Hollywood, growing up, all the relationships I had in high school. It's a really good episode. You're not going to want to miss it.
Hey, guys. Welcome to the Hollywood Raw YouTube page. Make sure you drop a comment, like, subscribe.
Do all the fun things.
Follow
everything. We're here to entertain you guys.
What are you waiting for? Hurry up. Let's go.
Enjoy.
I am so excited to have Talan. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
I'm not, but I guess he's here anyway.
Yeah, I know. Yo, Jack, we need to have this guy Talan on the podcast.
But Talan, I saw you stumble upon my social media, and I was like, man, it was just so good to see you, and it's just like here's my thoughts on Laguna Beach. I'm going to give you my thoughts before we get into it. I just think when it comes to
real, I don't care if you were like, God, that guy was such a douche. Whatever. Don't even
No, I actually thought you were cool on the show, but when I think back to just the show in general, and I think about reality TV, it might have been one of the only reality shows where the way it was shot, the way it looked, and maybe it was just me, the age when it came out, it felt real. It felt very pure. And I watched the show recently because now it's like came back on Netflix, and I just watched a few of the old episodes. And again, I still feel like when I watch it, it doesn't feel like when you see acting or people trying to be some character that you see on The Bachelor or some of these other reality shows. It was just I don't know. It was just nice in a way.
I think a lot of it had to do with when it came out, right? Like I think if the show came out in the age of social media, you might have seen more characters because you could benefit. From a social standpoint, getting more followers and kind of, being like you saw it on The Hills, right? Like when social media was out, when the later seasons of The Hills was out, you saw people, on that show, without naming any names, that were maybe playing specific villains or characters, understanding that they were going to get more followers.
Yep.
But
yeah.
My show came out at a time when there was no social media. So as a result, you were like, for all we knew, no one was going to watch this show. It was just going to be something we did for fun and on the weekends, and who knows? And away it went, right? So, yeah.
My big thing was, like Adam said, I felt like it was so real. And I was living in Orange County. I still live in Orange County. So I wasn't that far away from Laguna. Laguna was somewhere that we'd hang out at. And, we were kind of in high school at the same time. So, like, it was cool growing up watching the show and it being so close, But I felt like it was so real. And I felt so that it was crazy to me over the years when you find out certain parts of it were staged. And I don't know how much of it, like, how much of that show was staged or scripted or made to just enhance storylines? Because to this day, I still don't know.
Yeah. So this is going to be I'll make it as short as I can, but it's a weighted question, right? So My opinion is that everyone's going to give you a different answer that was on the show, right? I would say the first season was about as real as it got because, nobody kind of knew what we were doing. We filmed on the weekends. We couldn't film during the week because we had school and things like that. So it was somewhat of a job, right? Like we had to fill in what happened, like a typical reality show. You guys know, doing TMZ and stuff, like things happened during the week that they couldn't film that we had to like kind of make up for on the weekends, if that made sense when we shot. They could just kind of continue the storylines. But the reality is like, that's typical reality TV. Like people say, oh, it's so fake. Like, sure, you're kind of moving the narrative. But for me, it got a little trickier, right? So the second season, Laguna Beach obviously was extremely popular. We couldn't just go to the beach, set up some cameras and some lights and film the show. I mean, there were tourists that would come to our town trying to find us filming the show. So it became kind of this phenomenon. And to add even another layer, I actually left high school early. I left high school just after my first semester. I went and got my GED and moved to Los Angeles. So the entire, I would say 90% of the second season that I filmed the show, I actually lived in LA and would drive back to film my episodes, and MTV made it appear as though I was still in high school. So my answer is a 9. the second season
Yeah.
in terms of fakeness, 10 being the most fake. I mean, I was going out, like out in the town. Like I was hitting the clubs up and seeing, hanging out with people. There were photos and videos. So,
oh, I remember. I was there.
I'm sure you guys.
I got to cover a lot of your fun, crazy life in my beginning days of TMZ.
That was a crazy time, because I didn't go to traditional college. I ended up getting my degree online. Because I didn't go to a traditional college, I view kind of that for those 3 years I had early on in high school, right after the show, is kind of college on steroids, if you will. I had too much fun. But thankfully, I had so much fun that I got it all out of my system, right? So now it's like, I live a boring life now, but yeah.
So
cool.
Yeah, let's go present, and then we're going to move backwards a little bit. So presently, you're living in Nebraska, which is way different than Laguna Beach. How, obviously, I think your wife is from Nebraska, and that's why you guys wanted to move back. How do you like living in Nebraska compared to California?
Yeah, so it was actually my decision to move here. So when we met, when I was 22, so I'm 36 now. So I don't know, I'm not good at math, but it was a long time ago. And when we got married, when we wanted to have kids, I just said, what are we doing? Like, let's move to Nebraska. Like it's cheap. The cost of living is less. I wanted my kids to have cousins that were all the same age because I didn't have a large extended family. So I wanted my kids to kind of have what I didn't have, which they have today, which is great. But, everyone asks me, is there like a huge shell shock? Obviously the weather is, the weather's the weather, right? Like, and I can't go surfing, which sucks. But, you take up new hobbies like hunting and fishing that I never did before. But I will say, like, everyone here is much friendlier. I find that, people are just a little bit more, it's like a community of people. Like I know the gas station, the guys who work behind the counters at the gas station or the deli. I mean, you probably experienced that too in New York, right? Like I know the guys behind the deli and but I wish I had some crazy answer. I mean, the reality is that at first it was a shell shock, but I've learned to really enjoy, like if I lived in LA or I lived in California, right? All my friends don't have kids. Like none of my friends have kids. Like some of them are just getting married. I wouldn't even be able to hang out with them anyway. I'd be at home with my kids. Like, so it wouldn't matter if I lived in California or Nebraska. I might as well be inside my house watching like, whatever the heck I watch on Netflix with my kids. So, yeah.
So I want to know, because listen, in LA and Nebraska, very different fame levels too. Someone walking down the street in LA, someone may not even talk to them. They're walking down the street in Nebraska, they're the biggest. What is life like for Talan in Nebraska? Like, can you go out in public and people recognize you? Can you not walk around? I'm just curious your fame level out there.
Yeah, so people here, the most famous person in Nebraska is probably like
Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett, of course, but no one ever sees him, right? Warren Buffett.
Adam and I drove by his house and started yelling.
I always wonder if he actually lives there, but I think he does.
I think he does.
But all the Nebraska Husker football players that live here, they're all the major celebrities, right? And then a guy like me comes to town. I would say in LA, I'm like a Z list, but in Nebraska, I'm probably like an A+, which is pretty wild. Just to say, but people here are super friendly. No one's used to, people are more surprised. Like, what the hell is that Talan? Like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
It's never like people are discovering slowly through my TikTok getting bigger that I actually live in Nebraska. And so, but I get stopped all the time and I embrace it. Like I'm super nice as long as no one ever says anything mean to me. No one ever makes fun of me or anything. People are just like, oh my gosh, you're Talan. And I'm like, I am. What's your name? And they ask me the same questions. Like, were you friends with LC and Kristin? Do you still talk to them? Do you live here? I would just say people here, going back to the friendly thing, people here are just super friendly. No one, is rude to me or my kids or, just anything that you might expect, I would say they don't pass judgment upon me. If anything, I think they're slightly proud to say in a weird way, like, oh, dude, you know that guy Talan? He lives in Nebraska now. So I hope they are in any regard. So, yeah.
And do you go back to Laguna Beach often?
So I go back about 3 times a year to Laguna. And I generally make a couple nights stop in LA, and then I go see my parents. I think if my parents lived in like Arkansas or like Ohio, I don't think I would have moved to Nebraska. It was a lot easier for me to make the decision knowing I could visit my parents in Laguna, a couple times a year. So that definitely helped a lot.
Laguna, obviously, they made Laguna look unbelievable on the show. And it is probably my favorite beach along the coast of California. It is so gorgeous. What was it like growing up there, though? Because it's paradise. You're growing up in paradise. What was it like?
Yeah, I was very fortunate, right? Like, obviously, there's a lot of money in Laguna. We like to say the difference between Newport Beach and Laguna Beach is that they have the same amount of money, but Newport Beach likes to show it off, and Laguna likes to kind of conceal it a little bit. Like, you might see more like VW surf wagons in the Laguna Beach parking lot, and you might see more like Escalades with spinning rims in the Newport Beach parking lot, which, by the way, I'm friends with people from Newport too, but they probably would agree with me on this. But I think MTV did a good job of making the town seem much larger than it was. I mean, if you visit, it's actually a quaint little town. Like, we don't have Targets. We don't have any, big box stores. Even our subway is in like a cottage. And, because of that, and because, we have this small little town, it made for the perfect place to have a television show about. I mean, you have a lot of I only graduated with 180 people in my class. So as a result, it's pretty easy for like this guy to hook up with this chick, and then your friend hook up with the chick you were just hooking up with. And there was it was easy for there to be drama because there wasn't really anywhere you could hide or go. But growing up there was just great. I would say that the most interesting thing that people don't know about Laguna is most cities playing football is like a big deal. Like, when you're a jock, like, dude, you wear that Letterman jacket, like, you're like the big shit at your school. I played football in Laguna, and you're not cool. Like, if you're not a surfer, volleyball guy, you're not cool. I was fortunate. I surfed and played volleyball, but with the football thing, it was like, I know this isn't that big of a deal, but to a lot of people in middle America, like, to hear that football was not a big deal in high school is kind of wild. MTV originally was going to follow us in school, and the school put a kibosh on it, which makes sense just for like a lot of the parents were kind of over it. And I'm kind of happy they didn't. I feel like the show would have been different and more like true life. So I'm kind of thinking it was kind of great that didn't happen, but they were going to follow me on the football side of things because there was this interesting angle of like how it wasn't cool to play football at my school. So, yeah. What
a cool life, man. Just surfing. That was like all the cool kids just surfed. Like, it was just like, that's what you had to do.
Huge stoner in high school. So like, I would wake up, I had this 4-foot bong named Norm. So I would wake up, I saved up all my money from the surf shop and bought this bong named Norm that I'd keep in my mom's garage that I called the dungeon. I'd wake up at 5, I'd hit Norm, I'd surf for an hour and a half, I'd go to school, I'd come home during AP ceramics. I ditch AP ceramics. By the way, AP ceramics, like what a thing. I would, it was the only AP class I ever took, by the way. I would hit Norm again. I would then go back to school. Then I would go hit Norm again. And then I would go surfing. And then I would go to like football practice or volleyball practice. Sorry, I messed up. I would go to football practice or volleyball practice, then hit Norm, and then go surfing until it got dark. And that was my life every single freaking day.
So sick.
Yeah.
Dude, why did you move to Nebraska? Just stick to the high school schedule.
We're like the last state to get legal weed too. Like, it's crazy. Like, I don't even know. So, growing up, I was like, that was my life. It was just like smoking pot, surfing, like everything you would imagine Laguna to be is what I pretty much did.
So what I want to know, you may not be the best person to ask this question because you got your GED, but I want to know, what was it like at school once Laguna started airing and you guys were now becoming more popular? Did that change your dynamics at school? Did people look at you? Was there jealousy? Did it make it harder to be at school because now you guys are on a national, international platform, and high school kids are fucking ruthless? So
Yes.
What was that like?
It's interesting, right? Like, I think originally when we were filming the show, you actually saw more like, fuck you guys think you're so cool. Like, before the show came out, there was more animosity towards us filming this show. When the show came out, people then started like trying to like find their way to get on the show, if you will. So you saw it was actually the reversal of what you would imagine it to be. People were nicer once the show came out and less nice when we were filming. But then there was always people that just didn't want, a lot of people in Laguna are very artistic and creative and kind of like against whatever we were doing. A lot of people didn't want to be on the show regardless, even if MTV begged them. So, I found it fascinating. That's a great question. I find it fascinating that it was the reverse. You'd think the opposite. You'd think people would be nice because they want to get on the show, and then once the show comes out, they were jerks. No, they were the opposite.
So you weren't in school, obviously, when the show was going on. But do you know how were like the teachers treating the students?
I was for the first season, but not the second. I was not. No.
Gotcha. But so how did the teachers treat you guys? Were they kind of asking you a lot of questions? Were they kind of excited about this or what?
No, the teachers were really hard on me. Teachers were always hard on me because I was kind of a problem child. I ditched like AP ceramics, right? So like I had a lot of problems with my teachers in high school. All great teachers though. They cared about me, but like I just, it was more like if I had a bad grade, they would blame the show, not just because I actually had a bad grade. Does that make sense? So it was kind of like, yo, you need to stop doing that show and focus on English. And I'm like, dude, I'm trying. Like, I film on the weekends. Like, I don't know what the problem is. So, yeah.
What did your parents think of the show? Because once it starts airing, now your parents are getting an inside glimpse to the world that maybe you don't want your parents to see that you're doing. Like, I always think about that. Like, what are people's parents thinking about this shit now that it's airing?
Well, it's funny because I did a TikTok the other day where it was like some trend where I'm basically like drinking from a red Solo cup and I'm at a party, and then it like says my mom, had no idea that I was drinking on national, like my mom, I forget. You could probably scrape this out because I forget what it was. The point was, let me start over. My parents were actually very apprehensive. My mom was not. So my mom was like on board, like thought it was kind of cool. Like, hey, never say no, see where it takes you. Like, you just never know. My dad's a really successful business guy, very prominent in Orange County. He's like, you're not doing this. Like, you're going to college. You're not doing this stupid show. And I think looking, it's a lot easier when you look back at your life to see how everything kind of connected to get you where you are today. It all makes sense. But I think during that period, my dad was just like losing his mind, like did not understand, like, what am I doing out in Hollywood? Like, where am I going? Like, I'm only 18, 19. Like, what is happening? I should be in college. But a lot of the parents, I think what's funny looking back is like, dude, when we're using red Solo cups on that show, like we're drinking alcohol. Like, high school kids drink alcohol. But like, unfortunately, most of my parties were on television, and I was like, I'm not going to let you guys ruin my good time. Right. So I would still, we would all drink from those red Solo cups, as you saw. So technically, like, that's super legal, right? Like showing underage kids on national television.
Yeah. So how does that? So going back to that though, does MTV say something to you guys like, "Hey, listen, like we really can't." Like, how does that? How do they do that?
They had. I mean, legally, they get in a lot of trouble, right? So. It was never supplied. It wasn't like, like most reality shows, they supply shitloads of alcohol so these people get fucked up and do dumb shit. Like, it was never supplied. They would get super busted. It was, in all honesty, like we would save up our money and go buy it at like the local liquor store with like our one buddy who had like a mustache would like buy it with his you know what I mean? And like we thought we were kings of the world, like with like Mickey's Malt 40s or whatever it was. But you know, they had to like, you know, they have to turn a blind eye. Do I think they probably knew we were drinking? I mean, they were in high school too at one point, but they didn't like go around and check our freaking drinks or sniff them or like, you know, you get what I'm saying? Like there was never any sort of like check. But I think that they had to assume, but they probably didn't want to even cross any line because it would get them in trouble. It was better to just stay as far back as they could.
Sure.
But it makes for better TV. So I mean, I would probably do the same thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I was watching an episode recently. I think it was the first episode of the first season, and it was I think it was Lauren Conrad was talking to Dieter, and then he had like a red cup in his hand. I'm like, no one's just has a can out, but like it was. Did anybody have cans? Like, hey guys, you got to put into a red cup. Like, is that how it would go down? Or
I don't remember. I just remember like, you know, maybe we did have to put it in a cup. I don't remember, but I do know like a lot of reality shows, they make you rip off labels and stuff, right? So I would just, I have to assume that MTV, I mean, listen, someone would just hand me a red cup and I'd put it in there. I didn't care if it was red or blue or green. So maybe there was someone feeding, you know, one of the kids, whoever was having the party, the cups, so that you couldn't tell what was in it or there was no brand involved. Plus, I think when you're a kid, you just buy red Solo cups because you can throw them away and they're cheap. So it's kind of like a win-win. Who knows?
By the way, Talan, what do your parents do? Like, I know that obviously your dad's been crazy successful. What line of work is he in?
Yeah, so my dad is he's in commercial real estate. So what he does is he builds he works with cities and counties, and he builds like jails, YMCA centers, government facilities, right? So state funded government facilities, anything, parks, giant office buildings, things like that. Very connected in the California government scene, if you will. My mom is in furniture manufacturing. So she works with, you know, large, like, for example, we were talking about lamps earlier. She'll represent like a lamp factory in China, and then she'll go to MGM Grand and say, hey, you know, we need lamps. And she'll say, great, I can give you 500,000 lamps for all of MGM Grand. Like she does very well herself. Yeah. Cool. So what a weird business though, like lamps or like chairs. Or like it's not, but it's at massive scale, right? It's like the entire MGM Grand. So I obviously didn't follow that traditional route that my parents, I think, wanted me to do, but it all worked out. So
I actually never been to Laguna Beach, so I'm going to ask you something very stupid.
Go ahead. So there's never a stupid question. I always say.
Okay, well I appreciate that.
You haven't met Adam long enough.
Yeah, well, ask me a stupid question.
So Laguna Beach is right on the beach. So the property is worth, you know, it's very valuable property, you know? So is every kid's family, is everyone kind of well off in a way? Like,
yeah, I mean, you kind of have to be, I would say. But again, you have to remember, like when we lived there, but it's all relative. I was gonna say when we lived there, the houses weren't as expensive as they are today, but it's all relative. Back then, that was probably expensive for then versus now. But like, I mean, I grew up with tons of freaking cool people. Like I went to high school with Roxy Quicksilver. Her dad started Quicksilver.
Sure.
Roxy Quicksilver. Rusty Surfboards was like down the road. You got the Fertitta brothers had a house down the street from my dad, which is UFC.
UFC Lorenzo, yeah.
Yeah, you have a lot of really cool people in Laguna, especially in the surf, you know, business space. You know, the business of surfing, if you will. It was a great place to be, right? You were close to San Clemente. You could go up north to Newport Beach, you know. So, like, I remember driving. It was like 6 a.m. It was the only time I've ever been fully starstruck. I was driving to a surf spot down the road. This guy pulls up next to me, and I'm like, who the hell is that? He rolls down his window, and it's freaking Kelly Slater, and he's like, where are you guys going? And
sick.
I just thought it was so cool because he was just staying at Quicksilver's house. And, you know, I've seen Kelly Slater a couple of times since then, but like, I remember just being a kid and seeing him in my little town and just thought, well, I live in a special place. Like I live in a special town that I know that doesn't sound very cool probably to you guys, but to me that was like seeing Brad Pitt or something like that.
No, I get it. Oh, trust me. We just did an episode of our best celebrity run-ins, and mine was with Kelly Slater, and Kelly's been a butt of mine.
Really?
Yeah. So Kelly, I have like, me and Kelly became friends, and we just met on the street, and we just have we became butt, and it's just. Yeah, it's weird. So I'm with you on Kelly Slater
too. So actually, I'm talking to the right audience right now, basically.
Yeah.
And mine was Tony Hawk, so we're all on the same page.
Oh,
here.
dude, we are on the same. I forgot you're from Orange County. Yeah, for sure.
So Talan, I want to know. Give me one, because of course I love Laguna Beach. But give me one like hidden area or cool spot. Like if someone goes to Laguna, you're like, this is what you have to hit up. Because that, I think people, they love getting this like little hidden information on our podcast. Is there something cool you could tell them to check out if they ever go to Laguna?
It would have to be public access, right? I'm assuming. Like I can't say a place like that's private because you wouldn't.
Correct. Give them somewhere that like only a local would know. You're not going to find it. Like that's what I think is cool.
Yeah. I would say go to the Sandpiper Lounge. So there's like a lot of bars in Laguna, right? But the Sandpiper is like where all the locals go. A guy I played football with, he's the bouncer there. His dad owns the bar. It's like in this little like cabin looking thing. It's on Brook Street. And PCH, you've probably been there, Dax, if you visited Laguna. It's hard not to go. But most people go kind of more to Central Laguna where there's like, I would say more touristy type spots, but yeah, you got to go to the Sandpiper Lounge or go to, God, I don't remember the name of the bar. I want to call it the brewery, but it's not the brewery. And that's so sad. I don't remember the name, but there's a drink called the Pino. And it's basically, there's this giant jug behind the bar full of vodka with pineapples in it that just sitting there for like, God, they have to be in there for like 25 freaking years. Like I've never seen them refill it. And it literally tastes like pineapple juice, but it's not. It's deadly. It's pretty good.
That's like, you know what? I tell people, don't go to the main beach. I'd say go to Victoria Beach.
You know what? That's
it's so cool little like cove with this random, stairwell tower that looks like a castle tower. I don't know. It's just like a fun spot that no one knows about. They don't put it on like the maps, but it's there.
I definitely agree with you. I think there's like this perception to go to like main beach or like, I like the beaches where it's more coves, right? Like where you have to walk downstairs to get to the beach. So you feel a bit more isolated. Laguna is kind of unique in a way that we have tons of those little coves like Crest Street and Bluebird. And like you said, Victoria, I mean, the list goes, every beach is like a cove. And it just kind of makes you feel like you're in a different place. It doesn't feel like, you can go to like Newport Beach or Huntington Beach. There's just like long stretches of beaches and it's kind of doesn't have that same vibe. Laguna's fully got that vibe going.
100%.
Yeah. So Talan, I want to say, when you're doing the show, you're still a kid, and you kind of, looking back, you think you know everything, you think you know what's going on, but you really don't know what's going on, especially since you guys were some of the beginning reality stars. Again, we said this before social media. So, you're a kid doing a reality show. At some point, we talked about the show being a little bit staged. Was there some stuff that MTV ever wanted you guys to do, even storyline, or just even do something where like you felt strong enough to say, no, I'm not going to do that because you just felt uncomfortable or it just wasn't you?
I'm sure there were a lot of times that I said that. I don't know any specific, I wish I had a specific thing that happened, but I know that I was very conscious of the fact that we were on television and that I wasn't going to do anything that wasn't me. Like I wasn't going to say something to somebody that just because they wanted me to say it, unless, unless like they were on board as well. Like it was part of like the story and I wasn't going to just like, if that makes sense, like I wasn't going to be forced into doing something until like, the second season. I mean, I had to be forced into everything. It was a little, like I said, it was from season one, it was like, ooh, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. Yeah. Season two, I'm like, I don't really have a choice. Whatever you need me to do, whatever you need me to say, like what happened this week at school? Cause I have no idea and I don't go here. You know what I mean? Like what happened this week? Okay, great. Let's do that. Okay. That's what happened. So
yeah.
So funny. Go ahead, Adam.
No, I was gonna say, did MTV pay well?
No, not at all. You know, I mean, like most reality shows, it was like, you know, I think the first season we got $2,500.
For each episode, or for the wait, 2,500 each episode for the season?
No, are you serious?
I think the second season I made like $8,000.
What?
Dude, in high school, I thought I was king of the fucking world. Like, I thought I had hit the jackpot. Now, obviously, looking back, I feel like, oh my God, we were so taken advantage of. But like, we straight up thought we were kings of the world. Like, I would show up at a high school party with a keg and I thought I was the man. And I was like, I could never run out of money. But yeah, dude, like, they completely just took advantage. I think things like that, when I look back, make me a little disappointed with the production. You know that we're kids, and you know that, like, you know, most day rates are what, like $1,000 or something. I don't even know what the day rates are for SAG anymore. But like, you kind of have to, like, I feel like I personally, if I was a producer or a network of a show, it would be hard for me not to incentivize these kids. Even if I paid them after the show came out and it was successful, like, I would have a hard time with myself knowing that I paid these kids $2,500 just for me to make, you know, millions upon millions of dollars off of them. I will say, I wish we would have been a little bit smarter and got together and like went on a semi-strike for the second season. Cause I know probably we all signed contracts, I assume, for 3 seasons, but we could still all just say, we're not going to talk on camera. I mean, it's not like a scripted show. You're like, we're just not going to say anything or something. We could have done something, I think, and MTV would have said 100%, what do you need? Right. So, but again, you know, we were young and naive, but as a result of the show, though, I made a pretty good amount of money. I mean, not life-changing money, but, you know, this is back when like club appearances were a thing. Like, you know, these clubs in Vegas would fly out on a private jet, pay $25,000 in cash in a briefcase, handcuff it to your arm and send you home. Like, it was wild. Like, it was crazy. So like, you know, and, you know, I was not even as popular as LC or Kristin. Right. So I can't even imagine what they were getting paid. You know, they were probably getting paid more money than that. So, well, yeah, I mean, you know, you made money as a result of the show, but the show itself, there was not very much.
Do you make money from the show coming back on Netflix or no?
No. And that's, everyone asks me that, like, do I get residuals? If I got residuals for the show, I would be absolutely chilling. I'd have a house right next to Dax's in Orange County. Just I'd buy the whole block. I mean, it's crazy. Like, the show, you know, when it was out, like, it was everywhere. I mean, you know, nowadays MTV, all it is like, what's that show called with
Rob Dyrdek?
Ridiculousness. Yeah, that's all MTV is nowadays. But I'm surprised they don't just run Laguna Beach on repeat or something. I mean, but it's pretty unfortunate. I get paid nothing from Netflix or from MTV or anything regarding the show now, or any of the merchandise. I think they have rights to use our, like, at one point, like, I walked into a Walmart and saw like all of our faces on like pencils and like, you know, lunch boxes. Remember when lunch boxes were like things like that?
Sure.
And I was like, damn, like, I don't even see any of this. It's crazy.
It's kind of sad. I mean, you were kids, you know, like, you didn't know what was going on and you don't know what you're signing up for. So it's just, it's sticky.
It's unlucky, but like, it's changed your life in so many other ways that, like, that's sometimes you got to look at it and go, look, sucks that I didn't get that paycheck, but so many other things came out. I want to know, why do you think they made LC like the star, the narrator of the show? Like, how did that decision get made? Do you have any clue?
I don't have a clue, but I will say, like, she's extremely likable, right? Like, I think MTV's producers, you know, like, it just came out. Well, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I was going to say, it just came out that like LC just did this bombshell interview and was like, yo, are we going to get there? Am I like jumping the gun here?
Well, no, it's fine. Listen, we will go with your lead. So you want to talk the bombshell? Let's do the bombshell.
Well, let's start. Let me answer your question, and then because otherwise I'm not going to answer your question. And these are probably questions that people want to know the answer to. So, no, I would say that, like, so the reason why I think MTV chose her, she's just an extremely likable person. Like, you rooted for her, like, but she wasn't like an ugly duckling. She was still very pretty, And you kind of rooted for her to get with Steve. And I kind of liken it to the like Ross, Rachel, Friends thing. It was like, will they, won't they? And then you had Kristin kind of getting involved in, in regards to like, her and Steven were dating and of course this was all extremely fabricated.
I was going to say, or were they? Who are they really hooking up with?
Yeah, it was honestly extremely fabricated. I mean, Steven and Kristin did have a relationship, but the love triangle of like LC with Steven, that wasn't necessarily a thing. I mean, I think it happened even before they started filming. At that point, we were like 14, 13 years old. Like, what the fuck? Like, you're not really even like, it's not even a thing, right? And so, and then them hating each other, Kristin and Lauren, like that wasn't a thing either. I don't remember them distinctly fighting unless it was on a camera. I don't remember them fighting off camera. Like LC, she had boyfriends. Like she had guys that she dated that just chose not to be on the show. I was hooking up with Kristin, a lot of high school. I hooked up with Lauren, some like towards the end of high school and a lot of, after high school, so we, she obviously said what I texted her after she did that interview on Back to the Beach. And I said, you just like completely blew up my life. And she was just like, I'm so sorry. I said, listen, it could be a lot worse. You just pretty much made me look like the coolest guy in town. So I appreciate it. and she started laughing. She's like, oh my God. Because, I think the point that she was making and the point I made with my TikToks that I put out was not like, I'm the man, look at me, I hooked up with these chicks. It was the point that I think she's making and the point that I made in my TikToks in response to that episode that went absolutely bananas was that the show is a show. These are characters on a show. But what happened outside of that show is not necessarily what happened in that show. But if you don't have that real focus in those characters and those storylines, then it's not a show anymore. It's just like high school. There's a lot of shit happening and it doesn't really all make sense. You can't latch on to this character. Like if you notice the show is very characterized, right? Like LC is kind of like, that girl from Friends, Jennifer Aniston in Friends. And then you have like Kristin's kind of like, the villain and the bad girl, right? And then like Steven's this like the good looking guy that's caught in the middle and all the chicks want. And Trey's like this arts guy who's like all about like nonprofit and like community. And then you got me, I'm kind of like in the middle.
Dieter was like the guy he was like a guy who really wanted to hook up with these girls, but he couldn't. He was totally friend zoned.
Dieter dated Jessica like a lot, I think, of high school, right?
Yeah, it was like that. Yeah.
I love Dieter. And then, then I was just kind of this guy that floated around. I never really, so it was really, I think the reason why I floated around so much as a character is because I never really was a character because like I would be hooking up with like Lauren or Kristin or whatever was going on in my life, but like it was never shown or it was hard to like, does this make sense? It was like I was floating. Yeah. It's like I was floating in the real show while the fake show I was on was on. If that, it's like the only way I could describe it is like if you're like filming a real drama, right? And in the show, Adam's hooking up with my girlfriend in real life, and I'm just sitting over here like doing the scene with you guys, watching you guys like make out in the scene, and like but it's all fake. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like, and also like one thing that's kind of interesting is so the first season of the show, I didn't want to film. So like the process of filming the show, they came to the school, set up a lunch table. And they started filling out like packets. They were like, yo, like what, who do you have a crush on? Or who have you hooked up with? Or who do you want to hook up? Whatever it was, like who's the meanest, who's the coolest, whatever. And they kind of had this like puzzle board and they started to piece together characters where they saw fit, right? I never wanted to do the show. Like I had just done like a Yahoo commercial with Al Gore. So I thought I was like, I know, right? Remember Al Gore? So I thought... And I can't find the commercial to save my life, and it pisses me off because I want to find it so bad. But I wanted to do more like traditional stuff, right? So I was like, oh, screw reality. It's not really what I want to do. But keep in mind, at the time, reality was like the real world and stuff. So I was like, it wasn't the caliber in which MTV is, or Laguna Beach was, right? It was like kind of true lifey documentary kind of thing, right? So I didn't really want to do it. And finally, after like they were done almost filming the first season, they're like, yo, Talan, you got to be in the show. What do we got to do to make this work? And the idiot that I am, they paid me $2,500 and I said, sure, I'll do it. So they had to backtrack me into the show to film and make up for those episodes I didn't shoot. So the storyline made sense. And then that's why I'm not on the DVD cover of the first season, even though I'm a prominent character, because they already done the photo shoots and stuff. And I think that's why my character, if you will, got lost in the shuffle because, you know, I didn't film a lot in the first season in a way they were already going. Right. So, who knows? You know, this is all speculation. This is all just kind of like what I think. But again, I think Laguna Beach, I have to give credit, was as big as it was because Lauren, Kristin, and Steven. Like you can't say like, oh, would it have been better with Talan or not, or who knows? We already know it was really good with them. So you got to give them credit. Like Lauren's super likable. Kristin, you like love to hate her. And Steven was just Mr. Hunkaholic. So, you know, it just kind of all worked out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Lauren
by the
does
way,
this interview.
Dax,
says
wait, hold on.
this.
I was
What's
gonna say, Talan, you were like the Pete Davidson of Laguna Beach. Like
Dude,
you just went around all the girls.
That is so funny that you just said that because somebody said that to me on my TikTok and I like about spit out my water. I think I relate more to that dude than any person in Hollywood just because like I think girls liked me even in Hollywood, like after high school, because like famous girls, because I didn't give a shit. Like I was just like a normal surfer skate dude that was like, cool, what's going on in the world? Like I didn't care that they were on this show or they were like this like I don't know. I was just kind of cruising around like this new town and I was a new kid on the block. And a lot of these people in Hollywood, they didn't have high school. They didn't go to high school. They grew up in the industry. So as a result, they experienced their high school through me and through the show. Right.
Yeah.
So, man, I get ahead of myself too much. I'm sorry, guys. You can bring me.
No. This is great. We're going to get into the other girls, but Dax had something.
No, I love it. No, I want to know. So, you know, Lauren does this interview. She reveals that, you know, LC and Kristin and you are all kind of doing your little like three-way love triangle in real life. You get home that day. How's that go? How's that talk go with your wife? Now that Lauren's put all your relationship shit out for the world.
Yeah, I never thought about it when I did it, and I should have. Because, like, at first I just put it out there. I was like, because it showed up, and I was like, oh, I got to say something. So I just, like, I think I leaned on, like, the Taylor Swift trend, like, whatever that was at the time.
It wasn't, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me.
Yeah, and it kind of worked out perfect. It was like a perfect, you know, it's like it was meant to be or something. Like the song was trending and the trend was trending and here was this episode. I put it out and then I was like, you know, later that night I went to my wife and I said, did you see my TikTok? And she said, I did. And, you know, my wife's super cool. I mean, you have to imagine this is not someone I dated like yesterday. And I've been with my wife for so long. But I actually felt guilty. It's funny you say that. She didn't care, but I felt guilty. And I said, I'm sorry I didn't ever bring this up to you before I did it. And she said, I don't care. Like, go have fun, whatever. Like, it's all good. But for some reason, I felt so guilty because I just felt like I had done something wrong. But, you know, it's all in fun. I mean, again, like, we got to experience something together as a group that was so unique that we kind of feel like bonded for life, even though, you know, like it was supposed to be real. Like it wasn't like, you know, so we all stay in touch. Like we're all, because again, it was like this very unique experience. We all got to go through, and now we're going through it again.
Do you guys have a group text?
We don't have a group text, but like I talked to Jason a lot. I actually talked to him before this. I'm teaching him how to use TikTok right now. So it's like it's pretty hilarious, like trying to walk him through how to like make TikToks and stuff. And then Steven, I see him every, most of the time when I go to Laguna. I was just in Lake Tahoe with him, which was pretty fun. Lauren and I are like Instagram buddies. So like, obviously she's married, kids, got her own thing. But like, when I say Instagram buddies, I don't mean we just follow each other. It means like, I'll be like, oh my God, that's such a cute photo of your kids. And she'll be like, oh, I love your wife's hair. Like, we're in each other's DMs, just having like, family friend talk, whatever. And then Kristin, I just talked to her. Actually, I reconnected with her because I just did the Back to the Beach podcast, which by the way is freaking insane. But yeah, I just did that podcast with them. So we reconnected, and now we're texting again, just saying what's up. Nothing crazy, but yeah.
That's awesome.
What about Trey? Whatever happened to Trey?
Trey became like a really successful fashion designer. Like, so he is in like high fashion. Like, so he lived in New York for I think like 8 or 9 years, and I think now he lives in London. But like, he works for like Vera Wang. I think was working for Vera Wang for a long time. But like, he does high fashion stuff. Like, I think whatever you thought Trey was going to do, he's doing it. Is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah. And then what about Dieter? What
Dieter, we're Instagram friends. I live in Omaha, so a lot of people drive through Omaha on I-80, and they always call me and say, "Hey, what's up?" I think Dieter was staying at a hotel down in downtown. He works for Even Hotels, which is like, I think maybe it's not Even anymore. He might work for another hotel chain, but he's like a high up, like VP of something, where he like moves to a new city to open that hotel, like hire this.
Gotcha,
this is what I'm assuming. This is just what I'm assuming based on what I see through life and Instagram and his LinkedIn. It's like he'll move to a new city, open up the hotel, hire all the people, make sure it's all ready to go, and then move on to the next one. Right. So
what about Lo Bosworth?
Lo Bosworth, I don't talk to her at all. Not that I have anything wrong with her. She definitely, I feel like, wanted to really get away from the show and all that stuff. I mean, I know didn't she do The Hills or something, but I feel like maybe she had like a fallout with somebody or something, like, but she moved to New York. She's doing super. I mean, she like owns that Love Wellness or something, which is like, I see it in Target. So like, she's obviously killing it.
Which is your favorite store. So
it is my favorite store. It's Target. Like it is absolutely. I go to Target every single morning, Monday through Friday, drop my kids off at school, go there for one thing, spend about $200 and walk out the door without the thing I went there to get. It's crazy.
Of course. That's also Costco. God damn. That place sucks my money out.
Yep.
I actually see Lo pretty, I see her somewhat often just on the streets in New York. Not the friendliest of people. Just saying that. Who said that?
Just like, see people on the streets? Like, do you guys just
I see people all the time. I'm on the street, so it's kind of easy to run into people. Like New York City, I always say New York City is one of the biggest, I guess it's the biggest city in the world, but it's just like, it's not really that big. It's like a small city. I just run into people all the time.
Gotcha. Because
it's like I move around a lot too, so yeah.
Gotcha. I feel like you probably run into people, like if you live in Greenwich Village or go to like, you're going to see all the same people all the time or something like that.
Yeah, it's a big city, but you have to walk, so it's somehow it's a big grid. Everyone's going to kind of
makes sense. You're like, you don't want to hang out in your apartment all the time because it's probably so small, so you end up being outside and out and about at the bars, restaurants, things like that, right?
Yeah, no. So I actually want to get into this. So life after Laguna Beach. Mm-hmm. You went to LA, you were kind of in LA, you started dabbling in the acting world, you're starting to kind of be out partying, and then you start to meet some pretty famous people, you start to meet some famous women, and that's where I was like, dude, like, first of all, let me say this, and again, for my job, I meet a lot of famous people, I say this, Kristin's one of the prettiest girls I've seen in person. I think Kristin's like, whoa, she's just a very pretty girl, and I think it's just like
people I think she's even gotten prettier as she's gotten older too. Like, I think, like she's definitely one of those people that, like, when she walks in a room, you're like, oh shit, like there's Kristin.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. She's 100%. And then all of a sudden, but another person is a person, like Nicole Scherzinger, So like, again, a very pretty girl. So how was it like though? Like, you go to LA to become an actor, you start to meet all these people. What was like after Laguna Beach?
I would say it was crazy. It was the craziest times of my life. I mean, meeting really famous people that were fans of the show, meeting people that were just in the industry. Hollywood, as you guys know, is a lot like high school. It's like its own
100%,
community of people, right? You have like the directors, producers, writers. It's like the nerds, the geeks, the popular people, the singer. It's literally high school all over.
It's high school. So you're so accurate. So true.
Yeah. And so it was just a whirlwind in my life. I was, involved obviously in some relationships that were somewhat, publicized, and some probably more than others for right or wrong reasons. But it was a lot of fun, as you guys know. It was a lot of fun.
Okay. No, I just remember. Yeah, go for it, Dax.
No, I need to talk about one of the most infamous nights in Hollywood history. The night that launched TMZ.com, and you were a part of.
Really?
Paris Hilton in the car, Stavros, Kimberly, you, and the Bentley smashing into the back of the semi.
I remember that like it was. So that helped launch TMZ.com.
It was TMZ.com was not launched yet. It was we were building the website behind the scenes. We had not fully built it. That night happened, and all the craziness of, Paris kind of trying to leave the scene, the cops pulling over, her like sweet talking out of getting arrested, like the whole thing was unbelievable.
For you guys, it was like wasn't Britney Spears in the car or something? No,
it was that was different. That was Britney Paris in the car.
There was another time. Yeah,
no, okay. You were in the car. You were in the car with Britney before? We're going to have to get into that.
There's nothing special happened. I just know that I've been in other cars. It's like you jump into Paris's car. You never know who the hell's going to be in the car.
Who is going to be in there? No, this was that night. And basically we had to get the video up. And so it was like, just put that video on the website. And that was all it was. It said TMZ.com. You go there and it's that video of that craziness.
No way.
Walk me back. How did you wind up in the car that night? What was it like being on the other side?
God, this sucks. You know what that is? I would totally tell you this story if I remembered it 100%. I do remember sitting in the back seat. I think we were leaving Ladue, right? Is that right? Ladue?
That sounds about right.
Ladue.
I do remember we were leaving Ladue, and I remember Stavros being like, we like hit.
It was like a parked semi in a parking lot or something.
Semi truck, yes. And the front of the car went under it. And it didn't really mess up the car, but I remember when we backed it up is when it really like messed up the car.
And he had the sweater like over his head.
Yeah, like overly done. Like I think I remember like Stavros, yeah, he was a wild dude. That dude was wild. Wild dude, but a lot of fun. Super nice guy. But man, that guy is like what you imagined him to be. That's who he was. Like he was like, we should ride jet skis in, this secluded part of Mexico and tow in with like, he's like in a 20-foot waves. Like he is who you think he is. Right. But that's all I remember. I remember him being super pissed off. Mm-hmm. And I remember just being like a deer in headlights. Like, what is going on? Something illegal is definitely happening.
And he like took off running. Didn't he take off running? And that's when the TMZ cameraman took off after him.
I think so. I just remember, I don't remember what I did. I think I probably just stood next to the car, like stunned or in the back seat. Like I am so terrified. My dad is going to kill me because I convinced him to like move to LA and he's like, to be in college. And here I was in like the back seat of this car. I don't remember too much, but I do remember that happening. I wish I remembered exactly what happened. I mean, I'm assuming that we probably had too much fun inside Ladue. I assume that, when we were trying to leave, there were probably a lot of paparazzi because of Paris Hilton and her boyfriend. And I assume that Stavros was probably pissed off and as a result got more pissed when he crashed her car. And then whatever you guys saw happen next. I assume that's probably what happened, knowing.
How did you get into the Paris Hilton circle? Because at that time, Paris Hilton was the queen partier of the world. And obviously Laguna Beach was a huge show, but how did you get wrapped in with her and
so
all of that?
The way I
She
got
was older
wrapped
too.
into Hollywood is there's this guy named Frankie Delgado, and he is he was on The Hills New Beginning, or on the recent episode of The Hills. And Frankie Delgado and he was my first roommate. So he and I lived together. He was just a club promoter, but that dude, by the way, super awesome dude. One of my good friends to this day. He and I kind of grew together in Hollywood, if you will. But he runs that town, straight up. That dude knows every person. You just name somebody, he'll say, "Hold on, let me call him," and they'll pick up his phone call. But Frankie knew everybody, and so because Frankie was my roommate, he was the club promoter that knew all these celebrities, because this is back in a time when there was being a club promoter like Bolt House or something was like a prestigious kind of, if you were the gatekeeper of this nightclub that everyone wanted to go to. So, he was the gatekeeper to some of these nightclubs during that, let's call it the peak era of nightclubs. Right.
Yeah.
And so he would basically knew everybody. I was just this kind of tag along dude. And then before you know it, I'd become friends with people and, whatever it was, it was just kind of I remember we had a house in Hollywood Hills. It was me. It was my first house I lived in when I moved in, after my first semester in high school. It was me, Frankie Delgado, this guy named Pace, and this guy named Brad. And we had a 5-bedroom mansion in the Hollywood Hills with an indoor swimming pool it was freaking wild. It was we had too much fun. Everyone's been there. I'm surprised you guys hadn't been there, but everyone has been there. One may have been there. I promise you. We were just all young guys having fun. But Frankie is the reason I got wrapped into just everything in Hollywood. I mean, I owe any sort of success I had in Hollywood, if I even had any, in comparison to some people. But the minimal success that I had was definitely in part, or any relationships were because of Frankie. Man, that guy is he's the underground king of Hollywood. So
okay. Before I forget, take me back. You got to ride in a car with Britney Spears and Paris?
I don't remember if it was, I don't remember distinctly, but I assume I've definitely hung out and spoken to Britney many times. If I saw her at a club or something, she'd always be in a private room or something like that, her own little thing.
And what was that like? Because I'm so fascinated with the Britney era of
this is
Hollywood.
this is late peak Britney era. So it's before she did all the crazy stuff. It was she was still, Britney bitch. She was still doing her thing. I don't know. She was just like everyone else. She's just normal. She just got super, fucked up the way we all get fucked up, drink a lot of booze and love to dance. And it's got to be hard to be that famous. I feel like being that famous would be so hard. I actually learned that meeting a lot of celebrities in Hollywood, I learned that all of them are fairly normal. The same way that we have weird quirks or wipe our own ass or I don't know, whatever we do, they do it too. Maybe they don't all wipe their own asses. Maybe they have ass wiper people they hire. But it's, again, Hollywood's just I don't really, I would say the coolest story, I'll give you guys a cool story. So one time I was at a nightclub in Vegas with an ex-girlfriend, and in walks this little dude with this giant mustache, and we were up on this stage, and in walks this little dude with a mustache and a suit. He goes, "Hi, are you Talan?" I'm like, "Oh God, what did I do?" "Yes." He's like, my boss would like to talk to your girlfriend." And I was like, "That's weird. Who's your boss?" And he's like, I'm not going to say the name, but because I will after, it'll make sense. So I'm like, "Oh yeah, he can talk to my girlfriend. No problem." So in walks all these bodyguards. Okay. And these bodyguards make a wall in this nightclub, and in walks freaking Prince with his freaking 12-inch platform heels, this, whatever you imagine him to be wearing. He was playing at Rio at the time. Right.
Yeah.
This dude is so small, so short, he just didn't even he was air. But he walks in, sits down next to my ex-girlfriend, talks to her for probably an hour, and leaves, and nobody at the club knew. Like, it was like their bodyguards did such a good job of like putting up this, like, it was like it's like he's just snuck in the back door, had a conversation, and he left. It was freaking crazy. It was
Who
like,
the fuck was your ex-girlfriend at the time?
It was Nicole.
Sure. Okay.
Why would he want it? So why did Prince want to talk to Nicole though?
Probably, Nicole's extremely classically trained. Like, she's a phenomenal musician. She's not.
Yeah, she's very talented. Yeah.
So they, just probably want to talk about music, and who knows what they talk about. Maybe he was like hitting on her. I don't even know. I don't even care. I mean,
yeah.
Prince.
You didn't stick around?
What?
You didn't like join in on the conversation?
I think they were, I assume they were talking about like something like business. And I tend, like, even with my wife, when she talks business, like with her, family or whatever they're doing, like, I stay out. I'm like, hey, you guys are doing your business. Like, do your thing. You guys do whatever you're doing.
But it's Prince.
Yeah.
I know. I was literally, it was pretty cool. It was definitely, a top 10 moment. I was more impressed that this guy could sneak in the door, have a conversation, and sneak out without anybody even making a peep, like, in the whole, like, no one even knew he was there. It was just, it was wild. Yeah.
Cool.
But was it weird for you? Cause you're a young guy, you're 36, right?
36. Yeah.
36. So you're 36. And at the time, well, not at the time, but you were a younger guy, and you're dating Nicole, and even with Paris too. Like, they're pretty decent.
They were like,
they're older than you. They're like 8 years old. 8 years older than you. Yeah.
7 years older than me, something like that.
Yeah. So was it weird? Like, kind of like, because when I remember seeing you dating Nicole Scherzinger, I was like, wow, dude, this is crazy. Here's a young guy dating like an older chick,
dude,
but she was kind of established.
Pete Davidson before Pete Davidson. Dude.
Yeah.
Dude, I was thrown out. No, I think it was never weird. I mean, I tended to date girls, if you noticed, were a lot older than me. Not significantly. I would never date like someone 20 years older than me, but like most girls I dated were probably between 5 and 8 years older than me. And I think I don't know why. I wish I had a reason. I think I think I related more personally to older women because I don't know. I just didn't really care about half the shit that a lot of the younger girls liked. Like, a lot of the stuff they liked was like very vanity and I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, when it didn't feel real. It was like, oh, like we were talking about absolute nonsense. I'm saying specifically in Hollywood, right? So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So that being said, you got to experience the best part of the 2007 Hollywood time. Who was the best person to party with at that time?
Oh, shoot. I wish I was prepared for this question. I don't know. I've had some incredible times. Like, one of my favorite times ever was we went to the MTV VMAs, and afterwards, Brody and I, which we're not even like close, but like we just like somehow connected at the MTV VMAs. We stayed 2 extra nights in Miami and had the most fun time I've ever had in my life. And it wasn't like we did anything extraordinary. We just, I don't know. It was the VMAs, and we were on MTV, and we were in Miami, and it was like, Miami wasn't as like hardcore as it is today. It was like a lot more like, you didn't have to have a bajillion dollars to like have a beer. Like, it was so much, it was so much fun. Again, like, I just have so many fun stories of, that I've just had just over the course. My roommate for 3 or 4 years was Andy Milanakis. So me and Andy became buds and lived together.
That's great. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and he is just such an that dude, like, is into quantum physics and like time travel, like all sorts of crazy shit, like wormholes. But he and I had some crazy times, right? Like, that guy is wild. I don't know how, the more I talk and do these interviews and stuff, the more I like realize how truly blessed and how cool my younger life was, and how okay I am living in Nebraska in the suburbs. And how crazy, like, sometimes I actually think like, oh my God, people must just think I'm lying, because like, it's so crazy. Like, some of this stuff is so crazy that I almost have trouble even remembering it or believing it. So now I'm just like, this is nuts. moments, but thankfully you guys have a lot of it documented. So you guys can like just pull it up.
I have it documented in my brain.
Yeah, this is
so
what
many
actually
years.
happened. But yeah, it was too much fun. Too much fun. You keep asking away, and I'll try to answer as best I can. Sorry if I'm not remembering.
Which celebrity did you meet that was the biggest Laguna Beach fan?
I have a great story, but it's not who was the biggest Laguna. I mean, so the biggest Laguna Beach fan was, God, what is her name? She's from Dead to Me. She's the star of Dead to Me. What is her name?
Kristina Applegate?
Kristina Applegate.
Yes. So my neighbor across the street owned a hotel in Laguna, and Kristina Applegate went there all the time. And somehow during conversation got mentioned she was a fan of the show, and somehow found out that my neighbor was the guy who owned the hotel and that I lived, across the street from him. So she requested that I like sign some autograph for her personalized to Kristina. And that was pretty weird.
That's cool.
I was at a CAA party in Hollywood Hills, which is like where just the absolute wildest shit on the planet. Like TMZ would have an absolute heyday in one of those things, like for real. And it was a Halloween party. It was late at night. I think I was like hanging out with Steve-O or something. I forget. Like we were just being crazy. And this guy walks up to me in a devil mask and he's like talking to me about the show. He's a huge fan. And turns out to be Leonardo DiCaprio. And I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
Leonardo DiCaprio is a Laguna Beach fan? That's awesome.
I don't know if he was such a maybe he wasn't like a diehard fan, but he definitely acknowledged who I was, which I thought was weird. And said, I forget, we was in a drunken state, but I remember we talked about the show for a while, and I thought he was pretty cool.
That's so cool.
I know one time I was at like I was at a bar in LA. What was it called? What was next to Ledoux? What was it called?
Oh, jeez.
What was that place
able
called?
To remember this.
You know what's sad is my roommate in LA owned that place. So that's how I would like get in there underage. I forget, but anyway, I was sitting there and freaking Justin Timberlake. We never really talked, but Justin Timberlake walked up to the table I was at, came over and said, "Yo, what up, Talan?" Gave me a high five and just like walked away. And I was like, that was the weirdest fucking thing that's ever happened. I've never had a conversation with him. I've never talked to him. He's just like, what up, Talan? And like gave me a high five and like kept walking. I was like, that's so weird.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
what a crazy time.
Yeah, I have more stories. I just think, unfortunately, like I'd have to be prompted. If you started talking about something, I would remember.
Yeah, I get it.
Whatever it was.
I'm surprised MTV hasn't approached you guys about doing some sort of like reunion, sort of roundtable, especially. Yeah.
So there's been talks over the years of doing something, but it's difficult. I think, unfortunately, the network. Not unfortunately, I just think, the magic is Steven, Kristin, and Lauren. Like no one would watch the Talan, Jason, Jessica, Dieter, Trey reunion. I mean, maybe they would, but it would definitely not be as big as if we all got together. And Lauren, she's obviously doing her thing. She's kind of over. I know she definitely put together, like we did like a reunion over Skype during the pandemic for like one of her charities. But, Kristin, I think Kristin would maybe do it if she had was the producer and kind of had some kind of control over it. I think Steven would maybe do it. I doubt it. I don't think Lauren would do it. And I don't think Lo Bosworth would do it. So I also think the show would have to be like I always say that if we ever did one, it would have to be like, like how the Jersey Shore does spring break, Vegas. Like if we did like a spring break Cabo, it would be pretty sweet. The only problem is we'd all be in bed by 10 o'clock. We're all married. There'd be no relationship drama. But I think if it was the right show, like maybe there's a way like that show Love Island, they have like games they play and shit like that. Like maybe there's a way to like do something that's still entertaining. But again, I don't think it would be I think a lot of people would tune in thinking it was going to be something else and it would be like, wah, wah, wah. It wouldn't be as cool.
Well, maybe even if it was just a special, like it wasn't hey, let's do a new reality show or something but kind of like Friends. They reunited and they walked through the old sets and they like talked about their time. And it was cool as a fan of Friends to watch and see them reminisce about these times together. I don't know, that something like that would even be cool.
The scary part is I think the 20-year reunion of the show is like in 2 years. So maybe I would imagine in a 20-year reunion it'd be almost dumb not to do some sort of, special. It almost would seem foolish, in my opinion, on behalf of the network. I always say I would never do reality again, but I would definitely obviously do that. Not for myself, but for, there's just, I'm learning as I get older. It's weird to say that there are people that cared, right? Like, meaning I don't think it's that cool, but there are people who think it's really cool. And I'm learning to acknowledge that. Right. So, my wife is,
I would say for me as a viewer, it was just a part of my life. It's not even the show. It's like that time of my life, that part of my life. I enjoyed watching it. So and again, you coming on this podcast and talking about it, I think is just like, we always say it's refreshing because you're so honest about it, but it's unique. It's interesting. And it's, I don't know. I really enjoyed this conversation just to kind of, we were on the other end covering you. And just to kind of have that kind of conversation of how was it like on your side, and like obviously Dax talking about the Paris Hilton story with it's just kind of cool to have that conversation years later and be like, what was it like?
I think it is really cool that we have this type of perspective. Like at first I was nervous about it, but now I'm realizing how freaking cool it is that you guys worked at TMZ while my life was happening on this side, and how I think that's really freaking cool. So I think I'm really happy that I did this and I said yes, because normally I don't say yes, and it's not because I don't know, I'm just kind of a shyer dude in my older age. I'm Pete Davidson, just kind of cruising through life.
Well, any other podcast would be horrible, so I'm glad you came onto ours.
No, for sure. I mean, normally I go on a podcast and they just like completely freaking blindside you. They're just like, "Yo, so what?" And you're like, "Dude, I'm going to tell all my friends to never be on your podcast."
Well, tell all of your friends to be on our podcast.
Please.
You know what's funny? We're talking about Delgado here, and I'm like, oh, that would be a really fascinating conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
The gatekeeper of Hollywood. That's the shit we love.
He is so undervalued, because I know on the hills and stuff, he obviously wasn't a prominent role. But that dude knows more stories and more shit than anybody you'll ever interview ever. And he's really entertaining. He's a funny dude.
Well, I'm booking him as we speak. I'm DMing him.
You should say, "Hey, I just interviewed Talan, and he just said that you were the man, and you
we had your ex-roommate."
Yes.
Love it.
Dude.
Yeah,
but Talan, I suggest everyone follow him on TikTok. It's such a great account. It's just fun. It's nice to see your kind of life now in Nebraska and see you with your family and building your house. Follow him on Instagram. It's just, again, that's why I stumbled upon you again, and especially with the show coming back on Netflix. I'm just so glad we have this conversation. It's so great to talk to you. I was a fan of you before I got to know you, and I'm maybe more a fan of you now. And it's so cool to see it's just so great to hear your stories about your experience while doing the show, and we're living through you, and it's again, I really appreciate it, brother. And thank you for doing this. Thank you so much
for having me. I hope we stay in touch, and it was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
I love it. And if you guys want to get an autograph from Talan, he'll be at Target Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. after he drops his kids off at school. You can meet him there, and he'll sign away.
On Center in West Omaha.
No, dude, thank you so much. This was really, really awesome. Looking forward to just hearing everyone's feedback, because we got a lot of Laguna Beach fans listening to our podcast. So thank you. Okay, he was awesome. He was fucking awesome.
One of my favorite episodes of the year.
Dude, I like every time, and I love our fucking podcast. I love it so much.
Talan was so much fun, so interesting, so honest, so real. One of my favorite interviews of the year. And it's so weird because we heard, I don't think you'd get this kind of interview from Kristin or from Steven or LC. I don't think they're as honest as he was. And yes, I know they do a podcast now, but
it's still different. There's the things that we get out of people, and I don't know how we do it, but the stories, it's really feel like I'm like talking to friends after like the first 10 minutes of like, you get to like get out the awkward conversation with everyone. But this guy was so cool from before we turned on the cameras to like start recording to this moment. Like so awesome.
Yeah, no, such a cool. I actually really like him. Like I want to hang out with him.
I want to go to Nebraska to hang out with Talan now.
I really enjoyed him. And yeah, fucking dope. So cool. Thank you guys for listening. Check us out. We actually have this podcast on YouTube if you want to see the video element. We're also on TikTok. We're on Instagram at Hollywood Pod. We're on Facebook. We have a private Facebook group called Off the Record where you guys kind of get to talk to each other, talk to us. You can ask us anything, and we will do our best legally answer all your questions. But you guys have some really good questions.
There's some great questions. The one I liked this past week was like, hey, remember the old photos of Britney with the umbrella? Like, who took those? I was like, Daniel Ramos. And I was like, and I remember he had the umbrella for. Anyway, there's just fun conversation topics
does he have
inside
the umbrella?
there. He had it for a long time. He was going to auction it off like around like the 10th anniversary of the photos. I don't know whatever happened though. Maybe we get Daniel on here.
Yeah, dude. I mean, 100%. Yeah, that he would be great to have on the podcast. But yet again, that's such a crazy thing. Like the umbrella is actually worth money because it's so iconic. But also, yeah, someone else asked me a question, and I don't even have the answer, and I have to really think about it. It's one of the best questions I've gotten in a long time. Whereas, have I ever caught someone like a celeb going through something where I wanted to like put the camera down and help them? And I'm sure it's happened. Like, it's happened for small stuff, but I have to think if there's anything big it's happened, So I have to think. But check out the Facebook group Off the Record. Thank you guys for listening. My name's Adam Glyn, at Adam Glyn on social media, at Dax Holt. Leave a review, 5 stars, say a few kind words, leave your name so we can shout you out. We'll see you guys next time. What's up, guys? If you like that video, there's plenty more where that came from.
Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell so we can just feed you all the goodness daily.
Hurry up. Come on, let's go.